Jide and Kike lay still, their bodies trembling, but not from fear. The road stretched out before them like an endless path of uncertainty. They could hear the wind rustling through the trees, the distant howls of animals echoing in the night, and the sound of the men's footsteps fading into the distance. For the first time since they were taken, the weight of their isolation truly settled in. They were alone, terrifyingly alone, in a world that seemed so much bigger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Tears pricked the corners of Kike's eyes, but she blinked them away, not wanting Jide to see her cry. Jide, sensing his sister's fear, squeezed her hand, even though his own heart raced with terror. The night was thick with uncertainty, and though they had prayed continuously, there was something about being left in this desolate place that made the darkness feel more oppressive. Yet, even in their deepest moments of fear, they didn't stop praying. "Dear God, protect us," Kike whispered, her voice barely audible in the still night. "Dear God, save us," Jide added, his eyes closed tightly as he clung to the only hope they had left. Though the road was lonely and terrifying, and though they had no idea what lay ahead, they trusted that their prayers would not go unheard. The world around them may have seemed cruel and indifferent, but their hearts remained steady, believing that somehow, in some way, deliverance would come. And so, even as the night stretched on and the fear grew more intense, Jide and Kike lay together on the road, their prayers rising like quiet whispers into the vastness of the night, carrying with them the hope that they would not be forsaken. It was only a short while after the kidnappers had abandoned Jide and Kike by the roadside when the hum of an engine broke the eerie silence of the night. A lone car appeared in the distance, its headlights cutting through the darkness, illuminating the desolate road. The driver, Mr. Ade, a kind-hearted man known for his generosity, was making his way home from a late visit to a neighboring town. As his car rolled along the quiet road, his eyes suddenly caught sight of two small, huddled figures lying motionless on the roadside. "What's this?" Mr. Ade murmured to himself, his heart skipping a beat as he slowed the car and pulled over. Something was wrong, he could feel it. In the pale glow of his headlights, he saw the children, their hands and feet still bound, their faces pale with exhaustion and fear. Without a second thought, Mr. Ade rushed out of his car, his heart pounding in his chest. His footsteps echoed on the gravel as he quickly approached them, kneeling down beside Jide and Kike. "Are you all right? What happened?" he asked, his voice filled with concern as he carefully untied their wrists and ankles, his hands trembling slightly at the thought of what these children must have endured. Jide, though weak from the ordeal, mustered enough strength to look up at the kind man who had come to their rescue. He blinked, tears filling his eyes, but he remained silent, still in shock. It was Kike who finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper, trembling with fear, yet filled with a strange sense of relief now that someone had found them. "We were kidnapped," she whispered, her small body trembling as she clung to her brother. Her wide eyes, still filled with fear, locked onto Mr. Ade's face, searching for reassurance. "Please, take us home," she pleaded, her voice soft but desperate. Mr. Ade's heart broke at the sight of them. He couldn't imagine what these two innocent children had gone through, left all alone in the dark of night, abandoned by cruel men. Without hesitation, he reached into his car for a bottle of water and handed it to them. "Here, drink this," he said gently, his voice soft and calming as he helped them sit up and take small sips. He could see how fragile they were, not just physically, but emotionally, their small faces etched with fear and exhaustion. As the children drank the water, their hands shaking slightly, Mr. Ade made a decision. There was no way he could leave them here or take them back to the village so late at night. They needed rest and care, and above all, they needed to feel safe again. "Don't worry," he said, his voice steady and full of warmth. "You're safe now. I'll take you to my home for the night, and in the morning, I'll take you back to your family." Jide and Kike exchanged a look, their fear slowly giving way to a cautious hope. They trusted Mr. Ade. Something about him made them feel like they were finally safe. And so, with heavy hearts but a glimmer of relief, they allowed themselves to be guided into Mr. Ade's car. The soft hum of the engine as they drove through the night was comforting, a far cry from the terrifying silence of the forest. Mr. Ade glanced at them occasionally through the rearview mirror, his heart swelling with a protective instinct as he saw their small forms curled up in the back seat, their eyes slowly drooping with exhaustion. When they arrived at his house, Mr. Ade's wife, a kind woman with a motherly warmth, welcomed them with open arms. She quickly prepared a small meal for the children, who ate quietly, their hunger overpowering their weariness for a moment. Afterward, she led them to a warm, soft bed, where Jide and Kike finally allowed themselves to rest. For the first time in what felt like days, they felt safe, the warmth of the blankets and the kindness of Mr. Ade and his wife wrapping around them like a protective shield. The following morning, after the children had slept peacefully through the night, Mr. Ade prepared to take them back to their village. As they neared the outskirts of the village, the atmosphere shifted. It was clear that the entire community had been searching frantically for Jide and Kike. The air was thick with worry and tension, and as Mr. Ade's car approached, villagers began to gather, their eyes wide with disbelief. News of the children's return spread like wildfire, and before long the Paroka family came running. Jide and Kike's parents, who had barely slept since their children had gone missing, rushed toward the car as it pulled to a stop. The moment the car doors opened, Mrs. Paroka let out a cry, her legs giving way as she fell to her knees, her eyes filling with tears at the sight of her children. Mr. Paroku, his usually strong demeanor shattered, wept openly as he gathered Jide and Kike into his arms. My children, Mrs. Paroka sobbed, wrapping her arms around them, as if afraid to let them go again. Her tears soaked their clothes as she clung to them, whispering prayers of thanks to God for their safe return. Mr. Paroku, his face streaked with tears, stood beside his wife, overwhelmed by the relief that had washed over him. The entire village, who had been gripped with fear and uncertainty, now stood in awe of the miracle before them. There were tears, shouts of joy, and prayers of thanksgiving as the villagers gathered around the reunited family.
I hope you are enjoying the story. Please, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you will be notified anytime I upload new video. Now let's continue the story.
Jide and Kike, though exhausted, smiled faintly as they clung to their parents, knowing that their prayers had been answered. And as Mr. Ade stood quietly by, watching the tearful reunion, he couldn't help but feel a sense of fulfillment. He had been in the right place at the right time, guided by a hand greater than his own. And though he had rescued Jide and Kike from the darkness of that lonely road, he knew in his heart that it had been their faith, their unwavering belief in the power of prayer, that had ultimately brought them home. As the days turned into weeks, the village, once filled with relief and joy at the return of Jide and Kike, now found itself shrouded in disbelief and confusion. Though the children had been safely reunited with their family, the police continued to unravel the mystery behind the kidnapping. The investigation led them deeper into the dark corners of the village's secrets, and soon, a breakthrough came when one of the kidnappers was captured. The man, disheveled and desperate, was dragged to the police station, where days of questioning finally cracked his resolve. Under the weight of guilt and fear, he confessed. His voice, though low, trembled as he revealed a shocking truth, one that would send ripples of disbelief through the entire village. Uncle Say, the man who had been like family to them, The man who had taken Jide and Kike to school every day had orchestrated the kidnapping. He wanted the ransom money for himself. The kidnapper muttered, his head hung low, unable to meet the eyes of the officers. It was all his plan. The police officers exchanged stunned glances. This revelation was more than they had anticipated, more than they had ever thought possible. Uncle Sei, with his warm smile and his stories, had betrayed the village in the most heinous way. The news spread through the village like wildfire, reaching every corner, every home, leaving shock in its wake. For the villagers, it felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath their feet. Uncle Sei, the same man who had been trusted by everyone, who had always been punctual, kind, and friendly, the village had long considered him a part of their community, almost like an extended family member. Now, they couldn't reconcile the image of the man they knew with the one being painted by the police investigation. There was a collective disbelief, followed by anger. How could he have done this? How could he have planned to harm the very children he had been entrusted to protect? Mothers and fathers, who had once waved goodbye to their children as they rode off on Uncle Sei's motorcycle, now gathered in small groups, whispering and shaking their heads in disbelief. He was always so kind to the children, one woman murmured, her voice thick with emotion. How could we have been so blind? But the most affected were Jide and Kike. The revelation hit them like a tidal wave, crashing through their young hearts with a force they couldn't comprehend. They had looked up to Uncle Sei, trusted him, and in their innocent hearts, they had never once suspected that the man who took them to school with such care could have harbored such dark intentions. At first, they couldn't believe it. Jide, sitting on the porch of their small home, stared blankly at the dirt path that led away from their house. His mind replayed the countless mornings they had spent riding with Uncle Sei, his deep voice telling them stories, his smile so genuine. Kike, sitting beside him, clutched her knees to her chest, her wide eyes filled with confusion. How could he do this to us? Jide whispered, his voice barely audible, as if saying it out loud would make it more real. Kike shook her head slowly, tears brimming in her eyes. I don't understand, she said softly. We trusted him, everyone did. Their minds swirled with questions, each one more painful than the last. Had Uncle Sei ever cared for them at all? Or had it all been a lie, a mask to hide his greed and betrayal? The innocence of childhood, the belief that the world was safe and good, had been shattered. It was a wound that neither of them knew how to heal. But in the midst of their confusion, the words of their mother echoed in their minds, words she had spoken countless times before. Always pray, because God watches over you. Mrs. Paroku, who had been quietly watching her children from the doorway, stepped out and sat beside them. She knew their hearts were heavy with disbelief and betrayal, but she also knew that this was a moment where faith had to fill the gaps that logic couldn't. Gently, she wrapped her arms around them, pulling them close. I know this is hard to understand, she said, her voice soft but filled with conviction. Sometimes, people we trust do things that hurt us. But remember, even in moments like this, God is still watching over us. He sees everything, and He protects you. Jide looked up at her, his eyes filled with the questions he didn't know how to ask. But why, Mama? Why would Uncle Sei do this? Mrs. Paroka sighed, her heart heavy with the weight of her children's pain. Sometimes, people let greed and selfishness cloud their hearts, she explained gently. Uncle Sei made a terrible choice, but that doesn't change the fact that God was with you, and He brought you back to us safely. Kike, still clutching her knees, wiped away a tear. We prayed, Mama, we prayed the whole time, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. And God heard every word, Mrs. Paroka replied, her voice steady with faith. He heard you, and He answered. That's why you're here, safe with us now, even when people fail us. God never does. The village might have been stunned by the betrayal, and Uncle Sei might have been locked away behind bars. But for Jide and Kaik, this moment, painful as it was, became a lesson in faith. They had seen the darkness of betrayal and the light of protection, and they had learned that no matter how unexpected the trials of life could be, their prayers were always heard. And so, as the village continued to reel from the shock, and as Uncle Sei faced justice for his actions, Jide and Kaik held on to their faith, knowing that the God who had watched over them in the darkest moments would continue to guide and protect them as they healed from the betrayal of a man they had once trusted so deeply. Jide and Kaik stood side by side at the edge of their village, gazing out at the horizon as the sun dipped below the trees, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. The world around them had transformed since their harrowing experience, but one thing remained constant: the unwavering belief in the power of prayer.
I hope you are enjoying the story. Please, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you will be notified anytime I upload new video. Now let's continue the story.
Even in their darkest moment, they had felt the presence of something greater than themselves. It was as if a warm, protective blanket had wrapped around them, shielding them from the cold, harsh reality that threatened to envelop their spirits. Each whispered prayer had carried with it a thread of hope, weaving a tapestry of faith that held them together, even when everything else seemed to unravel. When they had been taken, the forest had felt like an endless maze of shadows and fear. But as they had prayed silently, their hearts entwined in a quiet bond of trust, they found solace in each other. They remembered the countless nights spent under the stars, listening to their parents' stories, their laughter ringing through the air like a melody. Those memories became their refuge, reminder of the love that awaited them back home. As time passed, the fear that once gripped their hearts began to loosen its hold. Jide often reflected on the strength they had discovered within themselves during their captivity. It was a resilience he had never known he possessed, a light that had flickered but never extinguished. And Kaik, with her gentle spirit, had learned the power of hope. She understood that no matter how bleak the situation, a glimmer of faith could ignite a fire of courage, capable of illuminating even the darkest paths. The villagers, too, had rallied around them, offering love and support that made the burden of betrayal easier to bear. Each kind word, each reassuring hug, was a reminder that they were not alone. The community's solidarity transformed their pain into a shared experience, forging connections that would last a lifetime. It was in this environment of care and compassion that Jide and Kaik flourished, learning to trust again. As they grew older, they often found themselves reflecting on that pivotal time in their lives. They would sit together under the big mango tree in their yard, the same tree where they had played countless games, and talk about how it had shaped them. "Do you remember how scared we were?" Kaik would ask, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "Yes," Jide would reply, his gaze thoughtful. "But we also learned that even in the scariest moments, we had each other and our faith." Their conversations were not merely reflections. They became a guiding compass for their lives. Jide and Kaik knew that the world could sometimes feel dangerous and unpredictable, but they also knew that hope was a powerful force. They had witnessed its strength firsthand. Through their prayers, they had not only found protection, but also a profound connection to their own hearts, to each other, and to the love that surrounded them. With each passing year, they learned to embrace life with open arms, cherishing the simple joys that often go unnoticed. They would run barefoot through the fields, climb trees, and marvel at the beauty of the stars. They took time to help their neighbors, to lend a hand to those in need, and to share the lessons they had learned. Jide and Kaik became beacons of hope in their village, inspiring others with their story. They shared their experience not as a tale of fear, but as one of resilience, emphasizing the importance of never losing hope and always trusting that good would prevail. As they stood under the vast sky, hand in hand, they made a silent vow to carry their lessons forward. They would always remember the strength they had found in prayer, the light that had guided them through the darkness, and the love that had brought them home. And so, their lives became a testament to the belief that even when faced with challenges, hope could flourish and faith could light the way. With each day that passed, Jide and Kike embraced their futures, ready to face whatever came their way, knowing that they were forever watched over, cherished, and guided by a love that knew no bounds. In this story, there are some crucial lessons one can learn. First of all, Mr. and Mrs. Paroku saw the importance of instilling faith and values in children from an early age. From the beginning, Mrs. Paroku emphasized to her children the importance of prayer and faith, telling them, "God listens to little hearts like yours." This simple, yet profound lesson proved to be an anchor for Jide and Kike during their ordeal. The values of faith, hope, and trust in a higher power provided the children with the strength they needed to remain calm, even when they were kidnapped. This demonstrates that the moral and spiritual teachings parents impart to their children are not just ideals. They become life-saving tools in difficult moments. Furthermore, Mr. and Mrs. Paroka's decision to trust Uncle Sei with their children reflects a larger lesson about balancing trust with vigilance. While it is necessary for parents to allow others into their children's lives, this story shows the importance of ensuring that trust is placed in the right hands. By teaching their children the power of prayer, Mr. and Mrs. Paroku indirectly prepared them for the harsh realities of life. It is a reminder that good parenting involves not only caring for a child's physical well-being, but also nurturing their emotional and spiritual strength so they can navigate life's uncertainties with resilience. Jide and Kike learn the importance of holding on to faith and courage even in terrifying situations. The siblings were thrown into a dangerous and terrifying ordeal when they were kidnapped. Yet, instead of allowing fear to consume them, they turned to their faith. Their prayers became their source of strength, allowing them to remain calm and hopeful despite being surrounded by danger. This unwavering faith is a powerful lesson in resilience, showing that even in the darkest times, inner strength can guide us to safety. Moreover, Jide and Kike's behavior under pressure also demonstrates the power of solidarity between siblings. Throughout the ordeal, the two children supported each other, holding hands and remaining united in their prayers. This bond between them was a source of comfort, showing how important it is to have someone to lean on during tough times. Their story teaches that even when we are in frightening situations, we must hold on to hope, trust in the values we've learned, and support each other. Faith, courage, and unity can light the way when all seems lost. Uncle Sei's role in the story reveals a darker lesson about the consequences of greed and betrayal. At the outset, Uncle Sei seemed like a trusted and kind-hearted man, deeply integrated into the lives of Jide, Kike, and their family. However, his involvement in the kidnapping plot for personal gain exposed the dangers of greed. Despite being welcomed as part of the Paroka family, Uncle Sei's greed led him to betray the very people who trusted him the most. His desire for ransom money blinded him to the moral and emotional consequences of his actions, ultimately leading to his downfall. This teaches us the devastating consequences of greed, not only for the person who harbors it, but for the people who place their trust in them. Uncle Sei's actions serve as a reminder that betrayal, especially when rooted in selfish desires, has far-reaching effects that can destroy relationships, reputations, and lives. His fate, being exposed, arrested, and shamed, illustrates how short-sighted and damaging greed can be. In the end, Uncle Sei lost everything because of his betrayal, showing that dishonesty and greed will never lead to true success or happiness.
Thanks for watching today's story. I believe you enjoyed every bit of it all. Now I want you to do me one favor, subscribe to this channel, like and turn on the notification bell if you have not done so that whenever I release my next video, you will be notified immediately. See you soon.